These are some of the darkest unsolved celebrity deaths of all time. I think anytime a celebrity dies, there's naturally a lot of conspiracy theories that surround it, but these are just a few celebrity deaths that I actually find to be extremely suspicious, and I think they need to be talked about. All right, we're gonna start with Heath Ledger and his potential involvement with a little Olsen twin. Yeah, they connect in a really weird way that I feel like not enough people talk about. Heath Ledger tragically passed away on January 22nd of 2008 at 28 years old. His official cause of death was an accidental overdose involving a lethal combination of 6 prescription medications, painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleep medication. So this was really framed as completely accidental. Like, not a lot of people had that many conspiracy theories revolving around Heath Ledger's death, except for the fact that a lot of people kind of blame the Joker. And I think that's kind of a different conspiracy theory that we'll talk about first, I guess. But basically, a lot of people think that Heath Ledger really took on the role of the Joker and was going too far with method acting. And he really did go all in. Like, he isolated himself from people. He was very much trying to get into the mind of the Joker, who's obviously a sociopath. So it is a little bit concerning, and was concerning towards his mental health. And I think a lot of people have the conspiracy theory that due to the fact that he was so thrown into his role as the Joker, that possibly led him to have some mental health issues, which eventually led him to drug use. But again, a lot of that's just speculation. A lot of his family say that that's like probably not the case, and that he really enjoyed his role as the Joker, and they don't blame like the Joker, the directors of Batman or anything for it. So I feel like that is important to note. But something else that I've always found incredibly strange about Heath Ledger's death is Mary-Kate Olsen's involvement, because I didn't even know the two knew each other, okay? I remember hearing about this theory several years ago, and as soon as I did, I just thought it was so strange. And what perplexed me even more is the lack of people talking about it. I think there are a lot of people who know Heath Ledger and knew he died, but had no idea that Mary-Kate Olsen was connected in all of this at all. And all of this is alleged, by the way, because I see the Olsen twins, they might be suing people. I don't know. Please don't. I used to tell people I was named after Michelle Tanner from Full House, so that would be a full circle moment if they sued me. So don't do that. It's alleged. I also think it's important to note that according to Heath's family and friends, he was very, very cautious about substances. Like, he allegedly stopped smoking marijuana months before his death, and multiple people in his life claim that the cocktail of pills that he supposedly took accidentally wasn't something that he would have ever been known to use together. So that is suspicious in itself. And then there's the timeline of it all, which is the part that I find to be very suspicious. So Heath Ledger was found unresponsive in his New York City apartment by his masseuse, Diana Wolozin. So his masseuse arrived for a scheduled appointment, and Heath didn't answer the door, which was odd. She let herself in and set up his massage table, and then once he still didn't come out after some time, she went into his bedroom and found him unresponsive. So you find a 28-year-old unresponsive, who's the first person you're gonna call? 911, obviously, because I would just see this and think in my head, oh my god, he could probably be resuscitated. Like, I don't know, I'm not a professional. How am I supposed to know if somebody's dead? Like, absolutely the first thing I would do is call 911, but that's not who Diana called first. Instead, called Mary-Kate Olsen. Twice she called Mary-Kate Olsen. Why? We don't know. So let's go with the timeline here. So around 3 p.m., Heath's masseuse Diana arrived in his Soho loft. When she ended up entering his bedroom, she found him lying face down on his bed, unresponsive. She shook him, no response, and she kept calling his name. Nothing was happening, and instead of reacting with panic and like calling in the emergency services right away, she reached for her phone and called Mary-Kate Olsen, who's in Southern California at this point. I don't even know why that was a thought. Not gonna lie. It honestly made so little sense. A lot of people think that Mary-Kate Olsen and Heath Ledger were dating at the time, but there's really not a lot of evidence that they were really that close at all. Like, they never really spoke about each other. It was kind of just rumored that they had hooked up occasionally and they ran in similar circles. So I just feel like no rational person would choose to call a celebrity friend over 911. Like, that just, come on, it doesn't make sense. Especially because in his recent phone calls with his sister. Why not call her first? I don't know, because she used her own phone to call Mary-Kate Olsen. The masseuse's official explanation is basically that she knew Mary-Kate was close to Heath Ledger and thought that she could help. Again, I don't know why she thought that Mary-Kate Olsen was gonna be of any help 3,000 miles away in California, but nonetheless, That's the story that she stuck to. So not only did she call Mary-Kate Olsen once, no, she called her twice. And what Mary-Kate Olsen did, instead of also calling 911 or Heath's family or literally honestly anyone else, she sent her own private security team that I guess she has in New York to Heath's loft before she contacted the police, which is again very bizarre behavior in my opinion. I don't understand. According to several reports, when the masseuse Diana called Mary-Kate Olsen, Mary-Kate told her that she would send her private security over. She didn't say to call 911. She didn't express any confusion or shock. She simply just offered to send her security. That's really it, okay? I don't know. A lot of conspiracy theorists believe that Mary-Kate Olsen's security team was sent in to remove something that could have implicated her in some way. And this theory has genuinely circled around for over a decade at this point. Mostly because the timing of it is suspicious. The masseuse didn't even call emergency services until 3:26 p.m., which is 10 minutes after she found Heath, but still decided to call Mary-Kate Olsen before. And again, when you think somebody's not breathing, I feel like the first thing you're gonna do is call 911. Like, I just think that's a no-brainer. Again, Mary-Kate Olsen makes no sense. And the fact that Mary-Kate Olsen picked up the phone and was like, hold on, let me send my security? What does that even mean? A lot of people immediately thought this was weird. Like, the investigators basically admitted that they didn't really have an explanation for the choice that the masseuse made to call Mary-Kate. And Mary-Kate herself lawyered up almost instantly, okay? She refused to speak to any authorities unless she was granted immunity. And I think that in itself was enough to ignite any conspiracy theory here. Like, her friend or boyfriend or guy that she just like hooked up with, I don't know, had just passed away from a drug overdose. Why was she refusing to cooperate unless her name was fully protected? That's fucking weird to me. Sorry, it is. Mary-Kate was only 21 years old at the time, and of course she was one of the most famous young women on the planet, but she was very private at this point. And since her days on Full House, rumors have swirled for years about her and Ashley Olsen, but honestly more so Mary-Kate, about her involvement with the darker side of Hollywood, like elite parties, drug circles, shadowy relationships with older powerful men, etc. According to the people around Heath Ledger, his final months consisted of him starting to hang out with a new crowd of people that he wasn't typically friends with, and a lot of people have speculated over the years that Mary-Kate was a part of this group of people that Heath was hanging out with in his final months, and allegedly this group of people always had access to substances and people that were connected to dealers and just people of influence in general. I think regardless here, whether it's true or not that Mary-Kate Olsen supplied Heath Ledger drugs, or if she, you know, was the one that gave him the hookup in New York City or whatever, I think regardless, the connection here is undeniable, because the masseuse literally called Mary-Kate Olsen and then she was like, no, I'm not talking about this unless I have immunity. I don't like that. And the timeline itself has never really been fully explained or examined in the way that it probably should have, because I think it was immediately, you know, figured to be an accidental overdose. But Mary-Kate Olsen's security team basically arrived at the same time as the EMS workers, and I just think, like, why the hell did that happen? Why did that happen? I don't understand. So I think one of the most notorious theories here, obviously because Mary-Kate Olsen was 3,000 miles away, I think a lot of people think that she or somebody in her circle, or she connected her drug dealer to Heath Ledger that sold him these drugs that maybe could have been laced with something. I don't know. Obviously the autopsy never reported that, but that hasn't stopped people from having conspiracy theories about it. And I think this conspiracy theory really gained traction as well when investigators asked Mary-Kate Olsen about the origins of the medication found in Heath's system, and she refused to answer. I don't know. I just think it's like, when you're quiet like that, it's usually not for a good reason. I don't know. It's bizarre. I really want to hear what you guys think about this, because I personally have always thought that it was very strange how much this Mary-Kate Olsen narrative was swept under the rug. Because again, I don't even think I heard about the Mary-Kate Olsen of it till like 8 years after he died, which is kind of nuts. I just want to hear what you guys think, because to me, she's just acting shady for no reason. And then also, like, Mary-Kate and Ashley's like fashion line came out with a like handbag that had a bunch of pills all over it, and it was just like honestly in poor taste, knowing that someone that she was obviously close with died from an overdose. I just thought it was weird as hell, and a lot of people did as well. I just think it all kind of says a lot without saying a lot about Mary-Kate Olsen. Sorry. I hate saying it because I used to idolize the Olsen twins a lot as a child, okay? But I honestly think that Mary-Kate's involvement here will never be solved. Like, I don't think we'll ever really know the full truth of it, but obviously there's something more to the story here, because Mary-Kate Mary-Kate kind of acts like they didn't even know each other. And obviously that's not true. So I want to hear your thoughts. All right, the next celebrity death we're going to be talking about is the death of Natalie Wood. So Natalie Wood's death is definitely one of Hollywood's darkest and most unsettling unsolved mysteries. I would say it's that kind of case that really just refuses to let any questions die. Like, no matter what theory you believe in the situation, there are still questions that are just unanswered. So Natalie Wood was one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. She grew up in the spotlight and she had a very famous relationship with Robert Wagner. They were married and then they got divorced, allegedly, which we're going to talk about this in a second after we get all into the theories. But according to sources, Natalie Wood broke up with Robert Wagner the first time they got divorced. But allegedly, according to different sources, Natalie Wood divorced Robert Wagner because she found him in bed with other men. Don't know if that's true, but it'll come into play, okay? But later on, they ended up getting remarried, and on Thanksgiving weekend in 1981, Natalie, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken decided to take a little trip to Catalina Island. It is extremely important to note here that Natalie Wood was absolutely terrified of dark water and water in general, drowning. That was like her biggest fear, because when she was a child, her mom took her to a freaking psychic, and the psychic said, your second child is going to be such a huge star. Everyone will know her for her beauty. She's amazing, but she'll die because she'll drown in dark water. And I mean, like, what? So this was definitely a known fear that Natalie had. Not only is it ironic, obviously, knowing what happened, but the fact that the fear was there is very important to note. There's different stories here as to what happened on this boat, but essentially they were on the yacht, the Splendor, and it was supposed to be a relaxing little trip after Thanksgiving. And allegedly Robert, Natalie, and Christopher Walken went to dinner on Catalina Island that night, and it was around 9 p.m. They were having dinner, and allegedly people claim that there were some fighting. I think people thought that there was an affair happening between Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken, although I kind of have a different conspiracy theory now. But regardless, there is a lot of back and forth on what exactly happened that night. But either way, the next morning, Natalie Wood was found in a nightgown and socks and a big jacket, and she was drowned in the water at only 43 years old. So there's a lot of inconsistencies with people's stories here. The first thing that I want to talk about is that there were multiple boaters who reportedly heard yelling, splashing, or whatever they described as women crying out for help and saying, like, help, I'm drowning, between 11 p.m. and midnight. And not one of those callers was ever interviewed thoroughly. Like, it was just kind of written off as maybe it was something else. I think they kind of just wanted to wrap up this case and have it be done and known as an accidental drowning. But there definitely was a lot more to the story. So Robert Wagner's story ended up changing multiple times, but right after Natalie's body was found, he told investigators that they had a small argument and that Natalie went to bed, and when he checked on her later, she was gone. And he assumed that she untied the dinghy thing for the boat and basically tried to go ashore. Some people debate whether or not she tried to take this like little lifeboat out to shore because she got in a fight with Robert Wagner, but this really doesn't make sense when we know, first of all, how terrified Natalie was of water and drowning. That just doesn't really add up. And not only that, the dinghy was like tied up in a way that Natalie wouldn't have known how to operate. And again, Robert Wagner for years had insisted that he had no idea how she ended up in the water. But witnesses, like I said, not only heard a woman's voice yelling for help, but they also heard men arguing. And then allegedly there was a sound of a thud, like someone was being shoved against something or someone falling into water. And some of the boaters claimed that they heard a woman crying out for help for nearly 15 minutes, and no one on the Splendor acknowledged those cries at all, which is honestly kind of disturbing within itself. The captain of the yacht, Dennis Davern, originally backed up Wagner's version of events, but then decades later he admitted that he lied to protect Wagner. He basically said that he had been instructed not to say anything that would make Wagner look bad, and eventually he came forward. His story was entirely different, and a lot of people kind of believe that this could be true. So according to Davern, the night was filled with tension. From the moment the group boarded the yacht, Natalie and Christopher Walken were filming a movie called Brainstorm at the time, and the tabloids have already been speculating about an affair between the two of them. Whether the affair happened or not, we'll probably never know, but allegedly the rumors bothered Robert Wagner. He was known to be very jealous, and throughout the weekend, Walken and Natalie spent time talking and laughing and bonding over work, and Wagner reportedly felt excluded. Davern later revealed that Wagner's jealousy escalated to a shouting match at dinner Wagner. And when they returned to the boat, Natalie and Wagner were arguing even more intensely, and Christopher Walken tried to stay out of it, but became an unwilling witness as the fight grew louder and more vicious. At one point, Christopher Walken allegedly said something that sent Wagner into a rage, which is where we get the famous quote, "You're ruining your career by spending so much time with your family, you need to focus on work," which is allegedly about Natalie Wood wanting to take time off to focus on her children instead of chasing bigger roles. And Wagner took this as a direct insult and attack on him as a husband and father. And what happened next was never fully proven, but Davern and several other witnesses corroborate the fact that they believe that the argument turned physical. Davern stated multiple times that Wagner and Natalie went into their cabin still yelling, and then he would hear a loud bang. Some people believe that Natalie was being shoved or falling. Obviously there was alcohol involved, so you have to keep that into account here. But what's definitely most chilling is that, like, after a lot of the arguments, he just heard silence and he waited for the argument to continue, and it didn't. And then when Davern saw Wagner next, he claimed that he was distressed and flushed and completely different, and Wagner told him that Natalie was missing. But again, Davern said that he didn't really seem like somebody who just discovered that his wife had vanished. He was acting kind of strange and almost detached. Davern also claims that Robert Wagner wouldn't let him turn on the searchlights and wouldn't let him call for help, and insisted that they search the boat quietly first, something that again would waste a lot of valuable time and also is very fucking strange. Davern insisted that Robert Wagner delayed calling for help for over an hour after they noticed Natalie was missing, and it wasn't until around 1:30 a.m. that the Coast Guard was even contacted, which obviously would be far too late to save Natalie if she was alive in the water at any point. I think one of the most interesting pieces of evidence have to do with the bruising that was on Natalie's body. The autopsy was performed, and the coroner noted that Natalie had fresh bruises on her arms, knees, and head, and these bruises were described as being consistent with someone falling or being grabbed, but a lot of experts argue that they indicate something more aggressive. But this case was kind of initially just ruled as an accident, so the bruises was just chalked up to she fell out of the boat at some point and must have got the bruises on like a rock or something, whatever the case may be. That was until 2011, 30 years later, when the LA County Sheriff's Department reopened the case and re-examined that autopsy, and a new coroner statement honestly changed everything about this case. They officially changed her cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. In that same statement, the new coroner claimed that the injuries were highly suspicious and not consistent with simply slipping and falling into water. And a lot of other coroners claim that her bruises were more consistent with somebody who had gotten bruised prior to getting in the water. Again, at this point, investigators reached out to Robert Wagner. He kind of refused to speak to anyone about this. He didn't want to be interviewed. He hired very high-power attorneys, and he released like very vague public statements, just basically saying that he had no idea what happened and that what happened was an accident. Christopher Walken did actually talk to some investigators, but his story was very strange. Like, it seemed pretty vague and almost overly rehearsed. He basically claimed that he went straight to bed during the argument and he didn't hear anything unusual, which is just obviously bullshit. You're on a boat. Like, there's no way if someone's screaming, you're not gonna hear them. There's just no way. And then he allegedly only found out that Natalie went missing when he woke up. The Captain Dennis Davern has become the loudest voice pushing for justice, along with Natalie's family. Natalie's sister genuinely believes and claims to this day that there is no way that Natalie would have willingly got into the water. Knowing her sister's fear of water and fear of dying by water and drowning, I just have to agree. I think there's no way that she got into that water on purpose. But I had like a different theory because I didn't know about Natalie Wood finding Robert Wagner allegedly hooking up with other men. What if Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner were the ones having an affair and Natalie Wood found out? And that's why they pushed her overboard, or that's why they got in the fight, and maybe the push was accidental. There's a lot of questions here regardless, but I think it's an interesting theory. And again, I kind of think this is one of those deaths will never be fully solved because it's just been such a long time and it's so easy to rule it as an accidental drowning, even though the official cause of death has changed, which obviously is like big news, but that was over 10 years ago at this point and we still don't know anything. I think maybe we'll get a deathbed confession from Robert Wagner. He's like 95 at this point, so who knows? But I do remember, in fact, being devastated when I found out that Wilbur Turnblad, aka Christopher Walken, was involved in this at all. I mean, I didn't hear about it, and I only knew Christopher Walken from Hairspray. So this was just really upsetting overall. Not that I necessarily think he's guilty, but I think he definitely knows more than what he's saying. Like, to say that he didn't hear anything is kind of bonkers to me, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. What do you think happened? Do you think it was a crime of passion where Robert and Natalie were fighting so much that he ended up just like pushing her and she fell overboard and didn't come back up? What do you think happened? I really want to hear your thoughts. All right, the last celebrity death I want to talk about that I actually think has a lot of conspiracy that should be sparking around it, but I don't really feel like I hear that many people talk about it anymore, and it's the death of Ivana Trump. So Ivana Trump is Donald Trump's first wife. She is the mother to Trump's 3 eldest children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric Trump. And I feel like what a lot of people don't talk about is that Ivana Trump died one day before Donald Trump and their 3 children were scheduled to give a sworn testimony in the New York Attorney General major fraud investigation into the Trump organization. So personally, I obviously think that's suspicious because Ivana's death ended up leading to the testimony being delayed. But we're going to talk about it from start to finish, and honestly, even still to this day, the disrespect that Trump has for this woman is kind of nuts. So a lot of information about Ivana Trump and Donald Trump's marriage and some of the things that could have gone on during it came to light when he was running for president, and Harry Hurt, who was a writer who ended up publishing a book in 1993 called Lost Tycoon: The Many Lives of Donald J. Trump, and this was kind of coming back and resurfacing as he was running for president the first time. So part of this book, which honestly I do not think enough people talk about this at all. But part of this book, the most controversial thing in it, probably the fact that during Trump's divorce from his wife Ivana, Harry Hurt ended up obtaining copies of her sworn divorce deposition that happened in 1990, in which she stated that the previous year her husband raped her in a fit of rage. So according to Hurt's account, Trump was furious that a scalp reduction operation he'd undergone to eliminate a bald spot was allegedly very painful, and Ivana was the one that recommended the plastic surgeon, and he was in a lot of physical discomfort from this scalp surgery, that he took it out on Ivana and allegedly yanked out handfuls of her hair and then forced himself on her sexually. And afterward, according to the book, she spent the night locked in her bedroom crying, and in the morning Donald Trump, with a menacing casualness I would say, said, "Does it hurt?" And I just can't believe that that's like not talked about as much as it should be. Trump has denied both the raping allegation and the suggestion even that he had a scalp reduction procedure to begin with. But Harry Hurt claims that this incident that was detailed in Ivana's deposition was confirmed by 2 of her friends. And then also, of course, it was a sworn in testimony. Like, you're obviously not supposed to lie under oath. A lot of people don't believe that she was lying. A lot of people don't. However, she did kind of address her statement when Trump was running for president, and I wouldn't say necessarily took it back. She said, quote, "On one occasion during 1989, Mr. Trump and I had marital relations in which he behaved very differently towards me than he had during our marriage. As a woman, I felt violated, as the love and tenderness which he normally exhibited towards me was absent. I referred to this as rape, but I do not want my words to be interpreted in a literal or criminal sense." So in my opinion, it feels like Trump manipulated her to say that that wasn't true. I mean, she gave a deposition about it, and she had other friends there confirming it as well, lying under oath for her. I just don't believe that this doesn't have at least somewhat of some truth to it. And I think that that says a lot and is very concerning. Ivana went on to like defend Trump in many ways. Like, she would talk about her marriage in a negative way, but then also she would say that her and Trump were best friends and like whatever. It was honestly a very confusing, complex relationship, which I'm sure she probably was being manipulated to an extent with money and power held over her. I don't know. I would be scared to talk too, obviously. But things really came to a point on July 14th of 2022 when Ivana Trump was found dead at the bottom of her staircase in her Upper East Side townhouse. She was 73 years old, and the official cause of death was blunt impact injuries to the torso, and allegedly it was all due to an accidental fall. Now, a lot of people just didn't really believe this theory because, for one, like I said, the kids were supposed to testify the next day, which ended up being delayed. And also, these stairs like honestly didn't really look like it could cause that much harm, in my opinion, for somebody to fall down. I don't know. Obviously she was 73 years old, so it's not like she was like super young and falling. Like, if she fell, it would obviously be pretty bad, but I'm surprised that it literally killed her, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm also not a doctor, so who knows? I just think Ivana Trump was somebody who did try to speak out and then got silenced. You know, I guess you could say she's lying, you could say she lied under oath, but at the end of the day, she's somebody who knew Trump the most, like his early life, his finances, his marriages, his scandals. She obviously knew him very well. And a lot of people think that she was less outspoken about Trump, not even just because he was potentially like threatening her if she were to come out about some of the truth, but also because she wanted to be loyal to her children. Obviously, she knew that if she talked about Donald Trump in a negative way, it would affect her kids. And again, I just think that with the combination of Ivana's death leading to the testimony being delayed, that detail just set off an alarm for me, because I just think that there is something weird about it here. But to me, what's strange is actually the way that Ivana Trump was treated after her death that I thought was suspicious. So for one, in my opinion, this is very odd, but one of the strangest elements of Ivana's death to me is that she was buried at a Trump golf course in New Jersey. Why? She didn't, this decision honestly made sense to no one. It was very strange. It was like, it made no sense emotionally or symbolically. Like, Ivana was not a golfer. She wasn't known to have loved New Jersey, and she had no sentimental ties with the property. So why was she chosen to be buried there? And the answer is pretty fucked up. New Jersey basically has a tax code that includes unique benefits for properties designated as cemeteries, and cemetery land receives major tax exemptions. So owners avoid income tax, property tax, sales tax, and more. So by designating a small plot of land on his golf course as a cemetery, even if it only contained one person, Donald Trump became legally eligible for all of these benefits. So that's where the conspiracy theory kind of intensifies here, because like he didn't even give a crap about her to give her like a proper burial site, like just put her on the golf course so that he could get a tax break. It's kind of insane, like actually nuts. Also, to this day, a lot of people have reported seeing Ivana's grave and it's like super overgrown, like no one's taking care of it, and it's just a simple plaque, like no proper headstone was ever made. It's honestly so upsetting to see that, like for her. I think that's such a horrible way to be like remembered. And truthfully, do I think he did that to get a tax break in New Jersey? Yes. Do I think he was involved in her death in any way? Maybe, potentially. Like, again, it's a conspiracy theory, but I feel like the amount of respect he has for her showed in the fact that he used her death as like a financial gain for himself. And I don't think enough people talk about that. I don't. Anyway, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below any different celebrity deaths that you want me to talk about and talk about the conspiracies behind, because I know there are a lot. So let me know if you would want that video. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.